I used to think loyalty meant something. That if you gave your heart, your time, your sweat, people would recognize it. Honor it. But I learned the hard way that some people only value you when they need you. 13 years ago, I walked into my father-in-law's failing business, a shell of a company barely worth keeping open. I poured everything I had into it, late nights, working through holidays, missing anniversaries. My wife, Sarah, said she understood. Said she was proud of me. And it worked. The company thrived under my leadership. What was once a struggling venture became an $85 million enterprise. I should have felt on top of the world. Instead, I felt a shift, something subtle at first. The way Sarah would smile less when I came home. The way her father, Richard, would pull me into fewer meetings, like he already had something figured out. Then came the dinner. It was supposed to be a celebration. Richard had been talking about stepping back, and I assumed it was finally time for me to take over. We sat at his long dining table, the one where we'd had countless family meals. Wine glasses clinked, laughter echoed. And then, with the same casual ease as someone passing the salt, Richard turned to me and said, "Your wife's new husband will take over now." I laughed, waiting for the punchline. But Sarah was smiling. And it wasn't the nervous, joking kind of smile. It was the "we've already made up our minds" kind. I looked between them. What? Sarah's hand slid across the table, resting on a man's wrist. A man I hadn't even noticed before. Tall. Younger than me. Confident in a way that told me he already knew he belonged here. "Meet Eric," she said. "We've been together for a while now." I felt my stomach drop. The room got quieter, or maybe my mind just shut down. "You're joking," I said, though I already knew she wasn't. Richard sighed like I was an inconvenience. "Look, you did a great job with the company. But Eric's going to take over now." I turned to Sarah, searching her face for some kind of explanation, some hesitation, something. "This is a joke," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. She only shook her head, sipping her wine. I pushed back my chair, my heartbeat hammering in my ears. "So what happens to me?" Richard gave a small shrug. "You'll be compensated. You can leave quietly, with dignity. Or you can make this hard on yourself." Sarah's fingers laced with Eric's. I didn't even remember leaving the house. The next thing I knew, I was in my car, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. 13 years. 13 years, and they tossed me aside like I was nothing. I barely slept that night. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going down without a fight. The next morning, I walked into the office like I owned the place because, legally, I still did. They hadn't cut me out yet. And they were about to learn the hard way that I wasn't some fool they could push aside. I called an emergency board meeting. Half the executives looked uneasy, already aware of whatever backroom deal Sarah and Richard had been planning. The others were just confused. "Let's get one thing straight," I said, standing at the head of the table. I built this company. I made it what it is today. And I'm not handing it over to some stranger just because Richard decided to rewrite history. Richard cleared his throat. "You don't have a choice." I smiled. "Actually, I do." I slid a thick folder across the table. "You see, I've been paying attention. And I made sure that when the time came, I wouldn't be left with nothing." I leaned in. "This company? It's not just yours to give away. My shares say otherwise." The room was silent. Richard opened the folder, his face hardening. The paperwork was clear: I owned a substantial portion of the company. Enough to make things very, very difficult for them. Sarah finally spoke. "Why are you doing this?" I turned to her, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. "You mean, why am I not rolling over and letting you and your new husband take everything I worked for?" I shook my head. "Because I know my worth. Something you clearly forgot. Eric, the man who was supposed to replace me, finally spoke up. Look, man, this isn't personal. I laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Not personal? You're sitting in my seat, in my company, after stealing my wife, and you're telling me this isn't personal? He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Richard sighed, rubbing his temples. So what do you want? I met his gaze. I want out. But I want what I deserve. My shares. My worth. The full payout of my stake. You want to replace me? Fine. But it won't be cheap. The legal battle took months, but in the end, I walked away with more than they ever expected. Enough to start fresh. Enough to build something of my own. And as for Sarah? She tried to reach out once, months later. A text, short and to the point. I made a mistake. Can we talk? I stared at the message for a long time. Then I turned off my phone and walked into my new office. My own company. My own future. I'd already wasted enough time on people who didn't see my worth. I wasn't about to make that mistake again.